Namo Amida Bu. Just thought I'd chill out. Just woke up about an hour ago. Just thought I'd sit here, answer questions, chat, drink some tea if anyone's interested. Nothing really formal. Uh, the holidays are always a strange time for me. You know, I was raised Southern Baptist, and so, I'm familiar with all the traditions of Christmas and Thanksgiving and all that, but I've been Buddhist and immersed rather so deeply in Buddhist culture and philosophy that I can honestly say I'm at this point in my life an outsider looking in at all the Christian trappings and decorations and traditions and music. And it honestly seems kind of alien to me at this point. But I like where I'm at. I like the fact that my life is now centered around Dharma teaching as opposed to being centered around Abrahamic monotheistic teaching. And it makes a huge difference in my perception, how I interpret the events in my life. So that's the thing. There's a huge difference between having a point of view based on karma, cause and effect, as opposed to having a view where everything that takes place in your life is either influenced by an all powerful, omniscient, omnipotent, all knowing, all seeing God, or some devil or demons. And I guess that's the thing. Prior to, discovering Pure Land Buddhism and becoming a Nimbutsu reciter, my life was like a struggle between good and evil. And everything was, you're either in the will of God or you're out of the will of God. And now, now that that's no longer on the table, so to speak, it's not about appeasing a God or even appeasing a Buddha or anything else. It's about me connecting to the Buddha who understands me already where I'm at. So that's the thing. When I was a Christian, I used to feel like I had to go into explanation and very carefully word my prayers. It was a struggle. It was a struggle to live. It was a struggle to deal with all of the stuff that would come in my mind. It was a struggle to understand why certain things took place in my life, and my response would always be, why is God allowing this to happen to me? Why is God making this happen to me? Why is God causing this to happen to me? And now, God's not a factor. It's cause and effect. This is happening to me because of some karma I have accumulated either in this life or in previous lives. And it makes perfect sense. The Buddhist way of life suits me perfectly. I do believe I was always meant to be a Buddhist. I don't mean preordained or anything like that. I just mean this lifestyle, this philosophy, these traditions, this dharmic worldview suits me to a T. It's perfectly, and it's everything about it just fits like a glove. And it's just very profound. It's just very profound. Ouch, on my finger. The profundity of Buddhism is the fact that it transcends the concept of a God. It transcends concepts like sin, righteousness, especially Pure Land Buddhism. It goes far beyond the conventional Western wisdom as practiced here in the United States in particular. Because this is a culture that is prevailingly Christian. And I tried to be Christian, but Christianity never suited me. It never worked for me. Some people are content to be Christian or whatever for the rest of their life. This is how I feel about Buddhism. Buddhism, I know for a fact I will remain a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist for the rest of my life because this just fits me perfectly. Everything about it. The culture, the art, the traditions, the dharmic teaching. It was made for me. I was made for it. And I just enjoy being a Buddhist, I think, for the first time in my life. Like I've said before, I am really, for the first time in my life, honestly happy. And in spite of the stuff that takes place in my life, I can honestly say I am happy. I am fulfilled. I have no complaints. I couldn't say that with Christianity. My life, my mind, my emotions were in constant chaos trying to figure out what this God, Jesus, Yahweh, was doing, or why this God, Jesus, Yahweh, the Holy Spirit weren't doing what they needed to do to answer my prayers or make my life easier. And everyone would say, oh, well, God works in mysterious ways. God does things in God's own time. But when you take God out of the equation and you put karma, cause and effect, in as an explanation, it makes a lot more sense. Um, we're we have no one to blame but ourselves, and that's why I guess I'm to the point now in my faith that instead of trying to wrestle with my thoughts, I change the direction of my thoughts and I let go and let Amida. I just trust that I've entrusted myself and my karmic destiny to Amitabha Buddha. And that's it. I mean, I have hard times, I have stressful moments, I have conflicts with people every now and then. I have good times, I have bad times, and most times are just neutral. But I no longer feel this need, now that I'm not a Christian, to overanalyze everything and say, oh, okay, what am I doing? Is there a sin I need to repent of? Am I in the will of God? Am I really truly serving Christ? And am I being deceived by demons? Am I being led astray? And now none of that, that's irrelevant. It doesn't even apply here anymore. It's not about sin. It's not about righteousness. It's about me living my normal daily life and just trying as best I can to stay focused on Amitabha and his name. And I say the name off and on inadvertently throughout the entire day. And that's just a natural part, like I've said, like breathing, like thinking, it has become a natural function um, of my human life. My body will grow older, stuff will happen, and if I live long enough, there will come to a point where I am a decrepit old man, incapable of taking care of myself. It doesn't matter. This does not affect my Shinjen. This does not affect the assurance of the fact that I will be reborn in the pure land of Amitabha Buddha in my next life. This doesn't change anything. And then again, this is a difference in my philosophy now. It's before everything was like, oh, I want to be righteous. I want to be in the will of God. I want to serve Christ. I want to make sure that, I'm right before I stand before God on the day of judgment. And, I want to make sure I go to heaven, you know. I want to make sure I don't go to hell or have to suffer through purgatory. Those are kind of alien concepts to me now. I mean, even though I lived through that and I thought that way at one time, now life is a lot simpler. My perception in life is my perception of life, that it rather is a lot simpler and involves a lot less introspection. I guess that's why I was never very successful at practices like Vajrayana Buddhism and Zen Buddhism, because I never really got the idea of how I was going to bring my unenlightened mind to enlightenment by relying upon tricking my unenlightened mind by means of using my unenlightened mind to become enlightened. Just, it's like, I'm not enlightened. I don't know how to become enlightened. And it's very humbling to understand that I don't have the wherewithal to bring myself to enlightenment on my own. This also frees me from a lot of responsibility. Now, I do try to live an ethical, good Buddhist life. I try to practice right thought, right speech. I do practice right profession. But I don't have to do any hair splitting anymore. I don't have to do a lot of morbid introspection. And, it's like I said in my last video, I'm just not that smart that I can do that. And hey, there's nothing wrong with admitting that, I don't have to present myself as some kind of intellectual Dharma genius, because that's, now I'm not stupid. I'm a very intelligent person. But I know what I know. I know from experience that if I try to put myself up on an ivory tower and pretend to be something I'm not, I'm going to have a hard fall. Because when you get in the habit of BSing everyone else, you begin to BS yourself. And I don't want to live a life. I want to live a life of truth. I want to live a life walking in the light of the truth of the Dharma. And the Dharma is all about truth. That's what I love about Buddhism. It's not about what you're supposed to believe. It's about truth. It's about a philosophy, a religion based on thousands of years of deep study of the human psyche, of the human condition. Deep understanding of cause and effect, the universe, what comprises the universe. Buddhism is the most in-depth religion I know of. Buddhism isn't just content to set up a bunch of rules and guidelines and bylaws and say, okay, well, believe this, because if you don't, you're going to hell. Buddhism provides an explanation for everything. And I've read the writings of Master Shenron. I've read the writings of Master Renyo. I've read some of the writings of Master Shandao. And, these were not people that came across Pure Land Buddhism and said, oh, okay, hey, that sounds pretty cool. I think I'll go for that. These were Dharma masters who had spent their life in intense, sincere, serious study, who wanted to know the truth. And that was, and I can relate to that, because even though I'm not on their level in any way, shape, or form, I've always been very sincere in wanting to know the truth and experiencing truth, even if I didn't agree with the truth. It took me a long time on the spiritual path before I was actually willing to even check out Buddhism. Because the one thing that used to piss me off about Buddhism was it didn't believe in a God. You know, it's a non-theistic religious belief. And it took me a while before I was willing to go to that section in the bookstore marked Buddhism. And once I did, I started reading more and more and more about Buddhism. And long story short, Zen Buddhism, Nichiren Buddhism, and then Chinese Pure Land Buddhism. And then I came across Paul Roberts' Jodo Shinshu group on Yahoo. And then I received the one thought moment of Shinjin, and that was that, you know. And from then on, the search was over. And I knew the search was over. The spiritual search to find myself, to find the answer was over. I had found what I was looking for. Once I knew that Amitabha Buddha was a real Buddha, his Pure Land was a real Pure Land, and knew for a fact that I would be reborn in that Pure Land in my next life, there was no reason to search. And I, not for one moment since that time of receiving Shinjin, have I ever considered seeking anything else. I have no desire to. Now, I like different music. I like art. You know, I like some Hindu music. I mean, you know, Krishna Das. You know, I like some of his songs. But I've never had a desire to immerse myself in the whole Hindu culture or research the Hindu pantheon. I mean, I'm set. And this is something that's not going to change. And, you know, I may go crazy one day. I may become a demented old man one day, but my Shinjin is set. I'm going to the Pure Land in my next life. You know, this is not something I've convinced myself of. I know this with a knowing that cannot be explained. If you have never received Shinjin, you're not going to understand what it's like. I remember Paul Roberts used to go and talk about when he received Shinjin, he was almost to the point of committing suicide. I'm like, okay, well, I thought when you had a religious experience, it was supposed to be like, you know, thrilling and enlightening. You know, how could you have this wonderful experience of Shinjin and still have a life in the Saha realm that was a living hell? I can get that now. Shinjin is not like some form of Zen meditation. I keep spilling tea on myself, sorry. It's early, I'm waking up. You know, that's one thing I found about Zen was about clearing the mind, experiencing levels and phenomenon and lights and whatnot during meditation, various forms of meditation, koans, And all the chants that were done in Zen were done to clear the mind or focus the mind or prepare the mind for a meditative state. This is not the case with Pure Land. Pure Land is about other power and trusting in the other power of Amitabha Buddha. That is to say, a power other than my own. I mean, I reached a point where I knew I could not bring myself to enlightenment through my own merits. And there comes a point in your life where you're just like, okay, I surrender. I give up. I've tried everything. And I know that anything else I try is just going to be more of the same. It's going to be in a different form, a different religion, a different philosophy, but it's just going to be me trying to fix myself through my own unenlightened mind. I can't. And I'm never going to. There's a certain amount of intelligence in being able to realize that. You know, there's a lot to be said about the fact that I don't have the answer. You know, then again, there's that Clint Eastwood saying from that movie, a man's got to know his limitations. I'm limited. There's nothing wrong with realizing you're limited. In fact, the worst thing that you can encounter sometimes is an idiot who thinks they're an intellectual genius. And we've all encountered people like that. And I talked about a guy I once knew who on Facebook tried to start his own sect of Buddhism. He even tried to on Facebook. He tried to open a Facebook page where he was going to create a whole new sect of Buddhism with robes and all this other stuff. And I'm looking at this like, what are you doing? See, that's what happens when a bamboo convinces themselves they are a spiritual master. All you end up accomplishing is discrediting whatever it is you're trying to master and making yourself look like an idiot. But when you realize you're not perfect, when you realize at some point that life is not going to go on forever, you do not have unlimited time in this life to screw around playing games with faith. That at some point, and it could be today, you could get hit by a car, you could have a stroke, you could have a heart attack. You could get shot, you could get stabbed. I mean, come on, this is the 21st century we're living in, you know. It's a very unpredictable time. And through overpopulation, you know, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of stuff that happens. And we like to think that we're in control. getting back to the whole thing about when I was a Christian, I would always tell myself, if I could just get this leg up financially, if this could happen, I would be happy, I would be secure, because I was living at the poverty level, not making enough money to make ends meet, living in a really crap apartment complex, an efficiency apartment in a very terrible neighborhood. I mean, literally, there were people that would set off Uzis outside my window. And just as I would get this close to getting where I thought I could make it, something would happen in my life and just screw everything up, and I would be screaming and cursing and shaking my fist at God, crying, why? Why? I turn to you every day. I fall on my face every time. Jesus, why do you let this happen to me? It's not about Jesus. It's about karma. It's not about God. It's not about, good versus evil. It's about cause and effect. Excuse me. What you send out into the universe comes back to you, either from this life or from previous lives. This makes perfect sense. And I'm just so grateful for the philosophy of Buddhism, for the teaching of Buddhism, for the Buddhas themselves, who I do not see as symbols. I do not see Buddhas as people that were great teachers who lived at one time, but now they're dead and they have no influence in the hereafter. A true Buddha transcends life and death. A true Buddha transcends time and space. A Buddha is the highest position you can attain, hands down, without question. And I don't have what it takes to become a Buddha on my own. This is why I rely on Amitabha Buddha. This is why I say the Nembutsu. This is why there's always prayer beads within my grasp. Because I cling to Amitabha Buddha. I cling to his teaching. I cling to those brothers and sisters who share my faith in Amitabha Buddha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. This is my life now, and it's a good life. It's a simple life, and it's not a perfect life. No life in the Saha realm can be perfect because you're living in the Saha realm due to your karma. I accept that now. It makes life a lot easier. Namo Amida Bu.